everybody. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to dive into today's topic. As everyone gets kind of settled in, I would love to direct you to the bottom of your Zoom window. You'll see what looks like a little chat bubble. Go ahead and click that chat bubble. It should pop up a little area that you can type into on the right side of your Zoom window. Make sure the to section is set to everyone. That's because the three of us will be answering questions during today's presentation, and we want to make sure that it doesn't look like we're talking to ourselves. So if you set that to setting to everyone, everyone will be able to see your question, and it makes everything kind of flow together a lot better. Once you have set your to everyone, please go ahead and let me know two things, and you can do this in as many or as few words as you want. One, tell me what subject you teach, and two, tell me what your comfort level is with Vernier's analysis apps are. We want to make sure that we are gearing today's conversation to what you want to learn. So please go ahead and let us know. I'm going to be looking at this chat bubble here and kind of taking a look at everything. So just starting in, I see we have a chemistry educator among us. Lovely, wonderful to see you. And we've got an average comfort level with the analysis apps, which is great. Today we're going to kind of get into getting started with those and some resources. We've got physics, we've got STEM, so everything from bio to physics to chem. Oh, there's a lot of you in the chat. It's all true. We've got physics. Awesome. Wow, it looks like a really good mix. Another physics, intermediate, low level. Okay. This is going to be a really good conversation today. And I wanted to say again, we will keep an eye on the chat. So as we're going through today's presentation, please feel free to use that chat section to ask questions as they arise. We want to make sure that we are getting to your questions. I'll touch this first. If we happen to not get to your question, please email us at support@vernier.com. That email is on the bottom of the slide here. So just feel free to ask us a question either in chat or via email. A few other housekeeping items that I wanted to touch on before we jump in. You will get a recording of today's webinar. It usually takes us about 3 to 5 business days to get that edited and emailed out. So as soon as that's live, it'll be on our website and our YouTube channel. Keep an eye on your inbox, you'll see it there. You're also going to get a link to a resources folder that we've put together for you. This has today's presentation in it, as well as a certificate of attendance. I'm going to drop that link into that chat bubble in just a second here. And then the last housekeeping items just are in regards to the questions, which we covered already. So with all of that being said, I will pass you off to today's presenters, and thank you all so much for being here.
Hi, I'm Verl Walters. I'm going to start off with the presentation, and I'm accompanied by Melissa Hill, Director of Chemistry, and we'll be going over some things with Logger Pro. Melissa and I thought a great place to start is just to look at a little bit of the history of Logger Pro in Vernier and how things have changed over the years. Vernier was founded in 1981, and in 1982, Dave Vernier advertised the sale of an application called Graphical Analysis. His physics students were having trouble graphing data by hand, and he wanted to be able to make use of a computer and do that. And that's our first instance of seeing an application with that title. So building things for computers went naturally on to now, what kind of devices can I do? And so the development of sensors became, whether it was started with a package, you built them yourselves, to finally Vernier making them sensors and then using an interface to connect them. In 1990, the ULI came out with DIN, circular plug DIN sensors. In 1994, Vernier partnered with Texas Instruments as they were producing an interface to be able to work with their calculators. And that's a theme with Vernier, is always wanting to provide data collection on whatever platform you have available to you. And that's always kind of a theme behind what we're doing with things. And so the TI partnership is interesting because that forced Vernier to change from the DIN adapter to the BTA and BTD connectors that we know and love with our sensors, most of our wired sensors that we have now. So that change also opened up the ability to create a single program rather than a bunch of small applications for each individual sensor, and the creation of Logger Pro in 1996 happened. So this Logger Pro app is about 30 years old, or 29 years old right now. So it's a very well-loved app. The partnership with TI also introduced the Lab Pro interface that came out in 2000. And the Lab Pro, again, the workhorse, the long time, we stopped selling it in 2012, so it was a 12-year-old interface by the time we finally stopped selling it. And I know many of you are still using that interface, as it is definitely a workhorse. In 2001, the current rendition of Logger Pro 3 has come out, which has been updated many times since then, but that was the start of using USB, so I can connect my Lab Pro to USB to a computer so I can collect data, and so that, again, that's really a way that we've been providing those things, and that was the trigger. Calculators and things were a big part of our early days of the relationship at TI, but later on we needed a device that could do it all and kind of standalone. That's when 2007 we introduced the first LabQuest, which now is on its third edition of that device. So that kind of complemented with Logger Pro, so I could do some standalone stuff, and I can also do some data collection between them. So that was a nice addition. But in 2012, we started seeing a trend towards, people wanting more personal devices. And iPads were first coming out, and they looked really popular in classrooms. And we needed to develop an application to run on the iPad. So as we were going through, what do you call this application? We gave the nod back to Dave's original graphing application, Graphical Analysis, and we named the application on an iPad Graphical Analysis, as we like to confuse things, right? Logger Pro and Lab Pro, which one's the interface, which one's the software? Well, here's another version of Graphical Analysis for iOS, and specifically for the iPad. But shortly after that, iPads were kind of taken over by the trend to go towards Chromebooks. Everyone was looking for a much cheaper, on one-to-one computing, and everyone was looking for a much cheaper version of a computer that they could run. So that's in 2014, we started developing in parallel to the Graphical Analysis for iOS, a Graphical Analysis app for Chrome. And as we were developing that, we also did one for Android, and it was getting hard to maintain all those. A decision was made to take all of those applications and run a single application called Graphical Analysis that could run on all platforms, including computers, the Chromebook, the iPad, and Android devices. And so that's kind of in 2017. We started developing the GoDirect sensors, the new lines. So we're moving away from now the BTA and BTD sensors to these new ones, and the newer Graphical Analysis can handle that. But trying to change Logger Pro, which is now already 15, 20 years old almost, it's hard to keep that going. So we knew we weren't going to be able to update Logger Pro. And so finally, 2021, we got all the best development tools we could. We developed the most robust version of Logger Pro that we could for its final release, 3.16.2, the ones that many of you are probably still using today. And we wanted to give it as long a life as possible. And so, but even since that development, Apple's now onto computers that don't use that are no longer Intel-based processors. They have their own processor they're using, and things again started breaking. Even though we were trying to be as future-minded as we could, so we knew it was time that Logger Pro to say we're not going to sell it anymore, and we need to move on from that. So what we did was we decided that we needed to announce to all of you that Logger Pro, even though we're no longer updating it, is also no longer being sold. And we know that that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for those of us that have been kind of grown up with Logger Pro over the years and has been our go-to for data collection. The good news is you still have access to Logger Pro. We're not cutting it so that you can't run the application. It's just if something about the application breaks because of an operating system change on a computer, we know we're not going to be able to fix that. And so we want to make sure that you know that. So you can continue to use Logger Pro as much as you want. Just know there's a risk that with any operating system change, not so much a security update for an OS, but when they start adding new features and things to their operating systems, something in Logger Pro could break that you depend on. So we want you to take control of this switch and not let it happen to you, where you're in the middle of a semester and all of a sudden the thing that you plan to do tomorrow stopped working because of your IT group updated your computer today, and then now you're kind of mad at us and screwed because you weren't able to do that. And so we want you to take control of that. Logger Pro is not a security threat. It doesn't talk to the internet at all. It's a self-contained application, but an outdated or unsupported computer operating system is. So if some people take their computers offline and want to keep using them on older operating systems, you're welcome to do that. But at some point, those computers will end up dying or will be taken away. So we want you to start preparing ahead. Why did we switch? Well, we needed to make newer computers and things are touchscreen friendly. Kids are used to applications on phones, and a lot of the computer type experiences are moving towards those kind of applications. We wanted to do that. And so our transition is to these new modern apps that we call our analysis apps. So Logger Pro basically is being replaced by those applications that we created originally started creating for the iPad and Chromebook, and now become our suite of apps. And Logger Pro, the functionality of Logger Pro has been split into 4 separate applications. And the reason we did that was because we found that Logger Pro was hard to maintain with having being the kitchen sink of everything. It's really nice. It's one application you go to. But for us to maintain that, if something needed to change with spectrometers, it almost, we say, well, we can't do that because there's just too much cruft to carry along with that. And things like spectrometers and certain instrumental instruments and a video analysis, those things, we wouldn't even consider adding features to them because that would mean we had to carry all of Logger Pro, and so we felt it was more important to split them up into more functional groups and to find them able to use those. So the main data collection application is Graphical Analysis. Does most of our sensors, and then there's a Spectral Analysis that will do spectrometers. Our video stuff is actually split in 2 parts. The analysis of motion of objects is our video analysis app. Having a video embedded in your files to match what's going on with your sensors, like I'm trying to do a titration, I want to see the color change at the same time as the pH changes, and I want to videotape that. I can sync those together. That's in a Graphical Analysis Pro. And then an instrumental analysis, again, some specialized applications. We'll talk more about those later. But to get all the functionality of Logger Pro 3, you'll need these 4 applications. So the then question is, well, what I have work with the newer applications? Very fair question. Let's talk about the devices. So Logger Pro basically was computers only, Mac and Windows. So that's the area which you lived in. The good news is that these 4 suite of apps support Chromebooks, which are very popular in K-12 education, less so in college because you can control what the students buy, but we do get college students that say, my instructor told me to get Logger Pro and I can't find one for Chromebooks, well, because it doesn't exist. So they would definitely have to use these applications already. They maybe have a phone or a tablet that they want to use these with as well. Of course, LabQuest 3 still exists with its own built-in LabQuest app. It does not run the analysis apps, but you still have full functionality with your apps, your sensors and things with a LabQuest 3, separate from these other apps, but we're focusing today on these analysis apps. So interfaces, remember our beloved LabPro. Well, LabPro is probably, of all the interfaces that are pictured on this slide, LabPro is the only one in which we don't have support in these analysis apps. In fact, interfaces you only need for graphical analysis. The other applications don't use sensors that require interfaces. So this really only pertains to graphical analysis or the Graphical Analysis Pro. So any of these will work. So that if you have a Lab Pro and that's the only interface that you've been using, and you're going to need to switch at some point as you're making that transition, we recommend going to the LabQuest Mini. The top one here is the current rendition of that. The two and below are just older versions of the same thing, and basically they all work with those applications. LabQuest Stream was again an older interface that you could use with these as well, but you can't buy those ones anymore. And then the LabQuest 3 can actually be an interface with your sensors to the graphical analysis app. So the big change, if you're still using a Lab Pro, you will need to change your interface. That's a big piece. Sensors are the next question. Which sensors can I use? Well, basically, all the old cable sensors generally will work with graphical analysis as long as those sensors auto ID. Back in 2000, when the Lab Pro came out, one of the reasons you went to this BTA and BTD connector was it had an extra line that you could use for auto identification. Went from 5-pin DIN to a 6-pin BT thing. So we could build in the ability to tell the software which sensor it is, so that a basic data collection file can be added. And your sensors must have that ability in order to work with GA, because GA does not have the ability to manually set up a sensor that doesn't present itself. Most people that's fine with, because it was 2003, it was about the last time we sold sensors that didn't auto ID in general. I find the most physics teachers have old photo gates they had back in the 90s. Those ones don't work here. So that's one of the more common ones. But for the most part, if your sensor plugs in, even with Logger Pro, and you don't have to open a file in order to have a collect button to start collecting data, that sensor auto IDs is going to be fine. The other advantage that Graphical has that Logger Pro doesn't is the GoDirect sensors, our newest line of sensors, which connect either by USB or by Bluetooth. Those sensors all work with this dual application that Logger Pro doesn't. So you get all the things that you had before, but you also then get some new sensors as well. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa now.
All right. Hi, everyone. So Earl touched on it briefly, but the next app, so that was kind of graphical analysis, is kind of your go-to for everything. But I saw a lot of you are chemists in the audience, and even physics people love spectrometers. So a lot of you may be wondering, well, what about my spectrometer? I tried to plug it into graphical analysis and it didn't identify. It will not. You need to use all your spectrometers in a different app called Spectral Analysis. And this is a completely free app. Doesn't have any like buy up options like graphical analysis does. It's just totally free. And it will support all the spectrometers that we have ever manufactured. So if you go into click on that link. Again, Dylan shared the resources folder that has the copy of the slide deck. But this is the link that tells you if your spectrometer is supported in spectral analysis. The original SpectraVis, SpectraVis Plus, our latest version, which is the GoDirect SpectraVis Plus, and then all of our versions of UV-Vis and fluorescence UV-Vis and emissions are supported. What is not supported in spectral analysis are ocean optic spectrometers. So for a long time, we resold ocean optic spectrometers, including the Vernier spectrometer, which was actually an ocean optic spectrometer. And we haven't sold those for quite a while now. Those are not able to be supported in spectral analysis. And yep. So I'm going to give a quick tour of spectral analysis and why you should be switching to spectral analysis now, even if you still use Logger Pro all the time. I'm not going to be giving a tour of instrumental analysis. Instrumental analysis is pretty specialized, like Verl alluded to. If you have mini GCs, so any version of mini GC, the original, the Plus, or the latest version, the Go Direct, those all will work in instrumental analysis. The Go Direct polarimeter and the Go Direct cyclic voltammetry system also work in instrumental analysis. What does not work in instrumental analysis is our previous version of the polarimeter called the chemical polarimeter. So that is a completely free app, again, separate, but completely free. All right, so now I'm going to do a quick demo of, first we're going to do graphical analysis. So I have here like I said, I'm a chemist, so I have a pH probe and the LabQuest Mini. So I'm going to take my pH probe and plugged into my LabQuest Mini, and my LabQuest Mini is plugged into my computer via USB. So just as I would now, I open Logger Pro. Instead of opening Logger Pro, I'm going to open Graphical Analysis, and this is the screen that you would see when you do that. And I have everything plugged in via USB. It'll actually go straight to this screen. So it automatically identifies, just as it does in Logger Pro, tells you pH on the y-axis, time on the x-axis, and now what do I do, right? So a lot of you were very used to opening experiment files, probably. And when Verl went through kind of the history of it, experiment files were really important when sensors did not auto ID, when you had to go in and tell it, this is a pH probe and blah, 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 blah. When we came out with auto ID sensors, that really wasn't as important to do, but it was still like kind of baked into habit. So we don't have experiment files that you open just straight away as you do in Logger Pro. All of the experiments that we've written have been updated to reflect that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you don't just open an experiment file. You just would go in and change the settings. So everything IDs, you click on mode, and now you see your kind of familiar data collection settings page. I changed the mode from, in this case, I have my pH probe. I want to measure the pH of a couple household liquids like vinegar and ammonia, and I got some soda pop here so you can see my samples. And so I am going to switch the mode to event-based, as many of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with. And then we are going to switch the name from event to sample number. We could also do, many of you are probably familiar with selected events, which will just we'll number them sequentially. So we'll do events with entry. And then I'm going to say done. And and now you'll see that I have a graph here and a table. Many of you may be missing the very nice, very large meter in Logger Pro. Like, oh, there's a tiny little meter in here down in the corner, but I want that to be bigger. So in order to get that, I click on this box of boxes up here in the corner, which is the view options. And this is where I can modify my screen to see what I want it to be. If I want to enable the data table in time-based mode, this is where I do it. If I want to enable a really nice big meter, this is where I do it. Video and notes are a feature of Graphical Analysis Pro. I can also do 2 graphs or 3 graphs. All right, so Other things that you may be looking for that you're familiar with in Logger Pro is I have a pH probe. I want to calibrate. How do I do that before I get started? Anytime you want to calibrate or zero a sensor, you do that down here on the tiny little meter, which is the sensor actions. And this is where I would calibrate or zero or change units. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a few data points just to show you where the analysis tools are. So I'm going to press collect, get out my pH probe, and I'm going to rinse it off a little bit and put it into some vinegar. And sure enough, my pH is going acidic. So I'm going to press keep. And I'm just going to call that number 1 for now. And then I'm going to rinse it in the water and put it in some ammonia. All right, wait for that to stabilize a little bit and press keep, say 2, keep. All right, rinse. And I'm going to put it in some soda pop. We're going to go back down, acid, and say keep. And that's going to be number 3. Okay, and then I'm going to stop data collection. And now I have some data on here. And I'm going to put my pH probe away. Okay, so to do different things in Logger Pro, you wanted to find like the XY coordinates. You now just click. You don't have to check a box. You don't have to use any of the hot buttons at the top. You just click and it tells you what exactly that pH value is. You can also do statistics. I can highlight and get a menu of all the features that could be added to this data set. So view statistics will give me my min, my max, my delta, my mean, my standard deviation, all that good stuff. Now in Logger Pro land, we were very used to, now I have to store my data, right? If I don't store it, it'll typically disappear. You no longer have to do that with Graphical Analysis or the other apps. Data is stored automatically. So when I press collect here, well, it'll ask me if I want to create a new data set. But when I create this new data set 1 is still there. And if I want to bring it back up, I simply click where I want to change. So just like in Logger Pro land, where if I wanted to click what's shown on the y-axis or the x-axis, go click that axis and you'll have options. So if I click on this, I can now turn back on data set 1 if I want to see it while I'm taking in new data. I can also rename my data set. So I can click on it and say, household assets and bases or what have you. And I can also delete a data set from here. I can also do that from the table. So if I stop data collection, I can click on the ... dots and rename, delete. I can add manual columns here. I can add calculated columns. This is how I do a lot of manipulating the data sets. So if I go into add a calculated column, I would rename it. I would insert an expression. And then if I had, these are the common expressions used in our labs. But if you had a custom expression that you were used to just typing into Logger Pro, you can do that here, but it does require the Graphical Analysis Pro. All right, and it's kind of the basics there for pH. I saw a lot of questions going back and forth. Is there anything that else I should show or touch on, Verl, that came up in the chat?
Nothing in particular, but you might want to show saving a file and exporting.
Yes, good point. All right, so the file menu is now this untitled. So if I click up here, this is where all of that happens. So if I messed up and I just want to start fresh, file new is right here. File open. File save, we'll save it as a GA file, so it can only be opened in GA. Save as, it is like if you want to rename it. Export is where you get the options to export an image of a graph, a CSV. So if you're wanting to take stuff into Excel, this is where you would click CSV and save it, and then it'll bring up your computer's save features. An AMBL is a legacy type file. And then if you want to export as a PDF, you also need the Graphical Analysis Pro features. All right, so and then the last thing, so I kind of showed you how to do fits and stuff over here by selecting, but you can also do it from in the lower left-hand corner, this graph options menu, and this has a lot of stuff in it. So this is where you will put a graph legend if you have multiple data sets, interpolate tangent. You can also do statistics or integrals, curve fits from here. But like I said, all of these are in the selection menu. If you want to add prediction, I know physics people do that one a lot. Chemistry people need to do it more often. That's in here. And then edit graph options is where you manually adjust what the graph looks like. So if I want to add a title, if I want to change from points to lines to bars, if I want to add a right y-axis, and if I want to adjust things, you know, kind of more automatically to make it look a little cleaner. That is where I do all of that stuff. And the other things that you may not be as familiar with in Logger Pro is the if you do have a mix of GoDirect sensors, this is kind of where you connect and disconnect if you're connecting wirelessly, but you can also just see what's connected down here in the little sensor. And then up here in the little ... you can see the about, so you can see what version you're using. Up here, you can activate a license key. And I can get to the user manual. I can check for updates. And then I can also do data sharing, which is a GA Pro feature. So that is the quick tour of graphical analysis. And we're gonna show some links and they're in the slide deck, but there are multiple videos on our website, on the Logger Pro transition web page that will do a lot of getting started with GA. For your specific need, you can find specific experiments that we walk through the whole thing. So I highly encourage you to do that. But I'm going to do a quick tour of spectral analysis now, unless, Verl, you can think of anything else I should throw in there.
No, I think you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, all right, cool. All right, so we are going to move on to spectral analysis. And when you open the spectral analysis, you will see this screen. And I even have my SpectraVis Plus, so my not latest generation of SpectraVis Plus, but the kind of the previous one, connected via USB to my computer. And it automatically identifies. You can see it says Vernier SpectraVis Plus connected. I can still get like serial number information here. I know that's helpful with troubleshooting. But the reason that I highly encourage everyone to switch with spectrometer use from Logger Pro to spectral analysis is because of this screen. right off the bat. When you plug a spectrometer into Logger Pro, you just see absorbance versus wavelength. You don't realize all the features that you can do. They're pretty hidden. You have to do a lot of clicking in order to do like a Beer's Law experiment, for example. Now we're putting them all right in front for you. So if I know I want to do absorbance versus concentration or absorbance versus time with my spectrometer, I just click on absorbance, and now I have multiple options of experiment types that I would start with. So I could do a full spectrum mode versus wavelength. I can do Beer's Law versus concentration, or some kinetics versus time. I have those same options for transmittance, fluorescence, emissions, if I have the fiber optic cable attached. And then advanced full spectrum allows you to do multiple data types. So I could do absorbance and percent transmittance in the same graph. And that's actually really cool because in Logger Pro, you used to always have to save and reopen and have a new file. So it allows you to do a lot more kind of simultaneously. So I'm going to show just briefly absorbance versus concentration. And you'll see it still forces you to do the calibration to make sure you're getting good data. It'll do this when, and we've gotten kind of smart about it. It won't always force you to do a calibration, but it does it when it's necessary. And I'm going to do a bad thing here, and I'm going to skip, but we're not. I'm really just doing it to show you the software. So place a blank cuvette in the device. So that's typically water. And I want to make sure that the cuvette is cleaned and lined up and that the lamp is on and warmed up. And then I press finish calibration and it'll calibrate for me. And now this is doing absorbance versus concentration. So I don't need to store a full spectrum. I could have done that first. I could have done full spectrum mode, save it, and then move on to this. But what's nice is that I don't have to do it because the full spectrum will be stored with the file. So I put in my sample. I have some blue food coloring here. And now I, as the student, have to figure out where do I want to do my Beer's Law analysis. So I am going to pick the peak here, and I just click on this graph. I could also type it in here if I already know what wavelength. You can just have the students type it in. And then I say done. And the full spectrum is up here. This is a live graph. So if I take it out and put in a lower, so you see the red line disappeared and it goes back in. And then you'll see all the normal things. So you see the nice big meter, the data set. I press collect. And now I have my familiar keep. The concentration of this one is 0.16. I keep it. And then I'm going to swap out for my next sample. And make sure it stabilizes. And then I'm going to do 0.24 and press keep. And so on and so forth for all of my concentrations. When I stop data collection, I can still I go down to graph options. I can still do statistics. I can still do curve fits, like that linear fit that you will, of course, want to do for Beer's Law. It doesn't have all the analysis tools or all the calculated column features. It does do calculated columns, so you can still do your kinetics, log, 1/log stuff for all those analysis. But if you want to do some custom things, you can always just open this file directly in Graphical Analysis Pro to get all those advanced features for analysis. But the tour of the app is very similar. So you have the gear up here, which shows your spectrometer collection settings. The box of boxes, again, is where you would turn on and off meters, off tables, and do up to 3 graphs. The ... tells you the software. And then down in here is the graph options. If I want to save and export, I do that up here. If I want to restart, I do a file new, open other files, save it as a graphical analysis or as a spectral analysis file. Again, you can do this. It'll save it as a spectral analysis file, but you can either open it in spectral analysis or open it in graphical analysis. And then, when I export, I can export graphs directly or CSV and to open it in Excel. So I get all those different ways to save as a spectral analysis file that can be opened in graphical analysis or as a CSV that can be opened in Excel. All right, those are the tours on kind of the little demo. Again, we have lots of resources available for specific experiments, but with that, I am going to pass it off to Verl to give you a little tour of video analysis.
Right. So one thing that about the
Oh,
video.
Verl, we're seeing your Outlook, not your.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Should be not seeing that. Share it a different way. Sorry. Share screen 2. All right, there we go. So the last application we're going to show you is a brief tour of is Vernier video analysis. This application is always a for purchase application. There's not a free version of that. Part of that because other ones are supported by sensor sales. This one is not. It is a web application in that it's nothing to install. You access it through a browser. So I've opened my Chrome browser. I type in videoanalysis.app and I enter that. And as long as I've already entered the license key for that, which I have, I get the application up for us. What you notice about these applications is they all share the same graphing and analysis package. So they're all developed under that same piece. So we're sharing those pieces. So going from one to the other, if you're familiar with how to do analysis on one, you kind of get it for how to do it on the other ones as well. So that's kind of nice. And all of Instrumental is going to be the last one to have this progressive web app version made. They're required to use them on Chromebooks. They have to have those, but you can run them on a Windows or a Mac computer as well if you don't want to have to install any of the software directly. That's just kind of a nice way to do that piece if you want to. I just do a quick analysis. So here's our basketball player Joel, a little bit different video than the one that's in Logger Pro, but it's still the same idea. And Joel, we want to get to the point where the ball leaves his hand. May want to analyze that. So I can go in and one thing I can do here that I can't in Logger Pro is I can actually track the object, so I don't have to mark each point directly, although I may want to go back and adjust where the markings are. But if I go in there and track that, now I get the ball and I can get my data right away so I can quickly get to the analysis of that object in the basketball. Some other things that are the same that you expect. For video analysis, you need to use the meter stick to get a scale that you want. And here, when I choose my system, I can just have my little circles that I move to place. Rather than drawing a little green line over my meter stick, I just place them here to get there. Notice my graphs all update automatically. I can set my origin. If I go back to where I started the ball toss there, I might want to place the origin of my system at Joel's feet, right to the middle of the basketball, so I can see that. So these kinds of things, setting the scale and the origin, that's all part of what we had before in Logger Pro. What's different is you see I have an option here for polar coordinates as well, which I didn't have in Logger Pro. So that graph scaling and polar coordinates are there. So I certainly can make that similar kinds of analysis with motions of videos that I make, whether that's a video that I've created myself or one of the 6 or so videos that we have included in the application. Logger Pro felt a little bit more like, and in some of the old like physics with video analysis where use the videos I have. We really, with VVA, want you to be able to have students create their own videos and capture those, because it's much more fun and exciting to analyze the things that you've created yourself versus the other. And then again, you see some of the similar things. I've got my view options where I can choose to hide the video once I have it. I can add notes to files for information there. I can hide my data table if I want to. Here I can only show 1 or 2 graphs in this application, but I still can do that. I can still do calculated columns if I wanted to calculate the acceleration column from here. I click on my graph options button next to a listing in my data table, and I have ability to add a calculated column. So those things all should seem very familiar to you from what you saw in graphical. Same idea. I have the similar kinds of ability to do a curve fit or add statistics, edit my graph options, do a manual fit, things like that. So all those things are here. And there's no feature in here that that requires an additional purchase. All the analysis things are all part of and included in the video analysis file. So that's a real quick overview of what you can do with this application. But I want to get back to talking about the other questions that might be coming up with things. So let me close out this application and leave that and return back to our thing. So we really did a very quick view of how to use these applications, and none of it's justice enough for you getting your hands on it and being able to do that. So certainly in the Logger, we have a Logger Pro transition page on our website that has applications that we've made to help you get started using these different ones. There's two of them that I made that dealt with using graphical analysis for Logger Pro users in particular, things that you would be interested in, things you're used to doing in one, and how do you make them work in the other, including what's in the Pro features. And there's Melissa did one here for the GoDirect SpectraViz Plus using the spectral analysis, and we have several of those, and then instrumental analysis. So we definitely encourage you to look at these applications and these little videos to help you get familiar with using these things as you make your decision on when you make the transition. The big question that's coming up is, well, do I really need Graphical Analysis Pro? And that's a fair question. What's in that? Certainly, there's a very robust data collection and analysis functionality that are in the free version of Graphical Analysis. So you certainly want to start there in general. But the list things are here, the things that are that you know from Logger Pro mostly, like strike through data, a right y-axis graph, error bars, having custom equations and calculated columns, or a user-defined curve fit, a specific notes field that you can add notes. All those things are things that are in the Graphical Analysis Pro requirements. So if you see an item here that you absolutely can't live without, that tells you that you definitely need to get the Pro license of graphical analysis. I think for physics, one of the things that for me, when I'm using sound information, I need the FFT to be able to do that. So FFT graphs are only available in the Pro version. So for me, that sells me on needing the Pro version, even if I don't need any of the other pieces. Those are all nice to have as well. Other people really like the uncertainty that shows up in curve fit parameters. They want to have those there. So that might be another reason that you want to switch or choose the Pro version. So other common FAQs, and there's more in the link that's up at the top here. There's more that you can look at besides the few that are highlighted here. Can you continue to use Logger Pro? Absolutely. It's still available to you to use. You just need to be aware that eventually something could break, and you don't want to get caught in the middle of the semester when that happens. Your license lets you distribute Logger Pro to your students. You still can distribute Logger Pro to your students if you want to. Graphical Analysis, those apps also allow that same thing. So when you purchase those for the ones that need it, or the free apps, of course, anyone can use, students can use it as well. We don't count number of devices or machines, we never did. So the site license kind of options, still similar for the new as well as Logger Pro. We will continue to answer any tech support questions you have about Logger Pro. The one thing we won't say is, oh, wait for the next release to fix that bug. If it's a bug and no longer works, we'll let you know that, and then point to how best you can work around it, if there's a way to work around it, or if there is what you can do with our analysis apps to deal with that. The lab manuals, Melissa alluded to the setup files that were in Logger Pro. They were very useful, but also our books were tied to those files, right? So they would say almost the first line of any lab said, the first thing you need to do is open this file in Logger Pro. We took that out again as more of a pedagogical thing. Students it was too much of a black box. Students wouldn't know for their own experiments they wanted to do what kind of setup they might have to do. They depended on a file having those already set up. So even with our lab quests, we never bothered to make files to work on our lab quest. Has been out since 2007. So that's kind of the reason we're not, but the labs, Melissa mentioned that we have the new books that have those, so they have been written to instruct the students how to adjust the mode if it's necessary, how to change what's plotted on the graph. But changing what's plotted on the graph is nothing more like it was in Logger Pro, clicking on the label on the axis and choosing from a list which of the columns you want to have plotted on that graph. So it's pretty straightforward once you understand and get comfortable with that. Not all sensors that were compatible with Logger Pro are compatible with the new apps. We talked about a few of those. The biggest deal is whether or not that sensor auto IDs, and that deals with much older sensors than it is the newer one. So that's one thing to watch out for. And again, not all Logger Pro features are in these analysis apps. We are continuing to develop this app. We will add those. And we do want to hear from you. We do keep track of people who request very specific features that are in one that are not in the other one. So if you send us a message at support@vernier.com and say, I really need this one feature that's in Logger Pro, that's important to me. You can ask when it will be added. Most of the time they'll say, we're not really sure. If it's within the next release, you might say, hey, it's coming in the next release, but most of the times we're not exactly sure. But we definitely will add your voice to the list to help us decide when to add these different features. So please do that as you explore the different applications as a replacement for Logger Pro. So for additional support things, as we talked about the labs and books, if you have a web account with Vernier and books that are already purchased, you can access your book files and get the latest versions of those books. You don't have to buy a brand new book if you already own the book. And if you don't have an account with the books showing in them, again, email us and we can help you get that set up so you can get the latest versions of the labs that are available in those books. So Melissa and I both have been working on making sure those book files are up to date and work with the latest software as well. We have videos and webinars. Like I said, the Logger Pro transition has several of these videos highlighted for you, but there's more in our whole collection. In the website under educator training, there's video section. You can search for videos by sensor name, by subject area, and you can find those. And we have, we'll continue to do new webinars, but we also have recordings of older webinars available anytime that you need them. So that's a great place to check out educator training for more videos and webinars that you can watch. And you can request a personalized training. So we do a customary 1 hour free for anyone. You can set up for longer ones to help people transition. You can certainly just always call and talk to any of us in our technical support group, and we will be more than happy to walk you through, answer questions. We know this transition can be uncomfortable. We want to do what we can to help make sure that you have what you need, and can build those things you need for you if you're having trouble. We are offering a special pricing for what we call the data collection analysis bundle that includes all 4 applications, including the pro version of Graphical. Obviously 2 of those are free already, but it's just easy to get them all in one. So Graphical Analysis Pro, Vernier Video Analysis, and the 2 Spectral and Instrumental Analysis apps all together for a 3-year time frame is $499. Generally, if you bought them one at a time, so Graphical Analysis Pro for 1 year is about $150, $149 for a year. If you start buying it in 3 or more years at a time, it drops down to $100 a year, for about $100 a year for that. So $299 for 3 years for that piece. And then for video analysis, it's generally $225 for a single year. And then if you bought it for 3 years, it drops down to $150 per year. So it's $450. So for $50 more than 3 years of video analysis, you get 3 years of graphical analysis as well, which normally is like a $700 value. So good to have this option available to you if you want to try that. We certainly do also have 30-day free trials of the 4 purchase applications if you want to try them out as well before you make a purchase. If you're still uncertain about the transition and you're concerned, what do I do? What can I do? What my life is changing too much? How can they help me with that? Certainly let us know. You can always call us and talk to us in technical support. Melissa and I are both in that group and handle those kind of calls. When you're on our website, there's a chat feature. You can ask your questions through chat, or you can email us at support@vernier.com. Any of those methods, you can get a hold of us and we can try to help you with the transition. It can be scary, it can be frustrating, but we want you to be able to be successful. And for right now, if you're using Logger Pro, continue to use it for the rest of the year and start planning that transition. So maybe it's this summer that'll work best for you, but do what you can and pick our brains to make sure you're in the right position when it comes time for that. And Melissa, is there anything else that has come up in chat or anything that we should talk about?
I don't think so. A lot, and we are hearing a lot about the experiment files, but I think a couple people did comment that, there were advanced physics books, all the spectrometer labs, like didn't have experiment files, so there it's not unprecedented, and students can handle a lot more than you think. But we definitely have those settings and all those step-by-step instructions for you in the lab books. But contact us if you do want to set up your own template files. We can help you do some of that. And I think Verl talked about it quite a bit as well. So I think that's really the only thing that just kept coming up.
Yeah, like I said, they were definitely necessary. I think that Melissa said definitely necessary early on because it was too much to learn the technology when things first came out. How do you get the sensor set up and set the graphs up? And it was definitely a challenge. And because a lot of the labs, you just plug the sensor in and the default application just runs that. But we definitely want the students to know how to set up their own experiment. How many of them, if they only opened up a file, would have been able to do what Melissa did, which was figure out how to turn on events with entry data collection, right? It's just not something that they learn how to do. And we want them to be successful in that moving forward and not be such a black box. Well, that's all from us. I don't know, Dylan, did you want any closing comments to make?
Well, I dropped this in the chat, but I wanted to let everyone know that because you attended, you will receive a free trial of both Graphical Analysis Pro and Vernier Video Analysis. You will get a link to that trial in your follow-up email. So when you get the recording of the webinar and all of our resources, you will also be able to get right into those trials. So keep an eye on that. It'll take about 3 to 5 business days, but you'll see that very shortly. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us.